Come, moon and star, come and look upon the heart. Upon the heart. Are you potato maxing? Boil 'em, mash 'em, stick 'em in a stew! Well, this is a odd late night stream, and I should probably tune the lights a little bit. Give me 1 second. There we go. Alright. I just had a great time hanging out, having a good time, getting a little synchronicity going for the first time in a long time when it comes to actual interaction with other human beings. In potentially criminal Sean Martin's chat, it was a great time. Now, I'm gonna go into this a little bit later, but the Guantanamo Bay Gitmo stuff really breaks my heart, but they allowed me to voice my opinion. They allowed me to speak on the fact that the unconstitutionability is spreading into Florida and will continue to spread if left unchecked. And that's that. We moved on to other topics and had a great time. Had a really, really fun stream. And I haven't had one of those moments in a very long time. I'm just very, very pumped, so I figured I'd stream in the middle of the night, show my appreciation, and try to capitalize on this energy. Now, shoot, I should probably hold this. That'd be cool. Ooh. I'm sorry, this is probably going to be a pretty lame one opening for the listeners. I built a playlist for the podcast, by the way. So now, if you want to go back and listen to all the episodes backwards, because it is definitely descending in quality as it goes back to my original ones, feel free to do that, well, that's the weird thing is, like, I might want to make up a playlist that's but chronologically accurate so that it can get, as I move through time and more develop my thoughts, right? Then I'll have a synchronized playlist on top of the one that is descended in quality as it goes on. So, I realized I might have uncovered the secret of furries 2 episodes ago when I was talking about the Europeans and dressing up like animals and pretending to indulge in traditions of their ancestors, but in reality just role-playing in strange ways. That's apparently that's furries. Yep, that's furries. Yep, I see that. I see that a lot. Now, the furries that can simultaneously be Christian are simultaneously the funniest ones, but the funniest furries are the furries that have, like, their whole Confederate flag on their, like, in the color patterns of their fursuit. That is the fun. I can't even tell if that's like a joke, but it probably isn't. And that shit's super funny in my opinion. Super funny. So, to get into it, the main theme permeating the French Revolution is the ease at which people lied. And you see this a lot when you go back and you study and you find out about the shit that the Jacobins said, and you find out that a lot of the things that they attributed to the ruling class were complete and utter fabrications, and they passed them on, and they encourage other people to pass them on too. And that's exactly how Marxism works. You lie a bunch, and you encourage your followers to lie a bunch. And they might not know that they're lying, but they're carrying water for that because you are so charismatically dedicated to that lie that you end up forcing it into reality. And that brings me to tulpas. Shit like tulpas is making a comeback into view, which is the practice of lying and forcing your willpower into a imaginary horcrux of sorts that stores your willpower and then tries to manifest in your view into the real world and then take on a will of its own. And that only exists to the extent at which real action is done, naturally, but it aligns with the esoteric secrets of the Theosophists and the secrets behind the Nazis. A lot of people point out that, and it's kind of a Hitler quote, kind of a misattribution, but ultimately was utilized in Nazi theology and Nazi philosophy, Nazi political rhetoric, that if you tell a lie enough times, it becomes truth. That definitely doesn't exist in the age of the internet, but it might have legitimately been one of the backbones of culture in a more fascist way. And if you want to actually genuinely learn about fascism, which has also, like, fascism is basically the proto-nationalism, and in a way, it's the bricks on which nationalism stands. And so you kind of have to learn about that if you want to have an accurate grasp of nationalism. And you know me, I hate Michel Foucault from France. He is legitimately my most hated and person I would consider my least favorite of all the philosophers. Even Schopenhauer gets way more respect than Foucault. And he believed that after World War II, there was never any need for nations again because they would be barbaric. That's fucking stupid. Naturally. And it's aligned with sort of the problems in Europe today. And you can look into that a little bit more. There are better experts on European history than me, naturally, and there are books and books and books to read about European history. But I got my points in my podcast. I developed them over time. They pass through time, and hopefully, as I'm developing them, I spend days and weeks and months thinking these things out, and then eventually there's a point that somebody can go, you know what, that actually makes sense. I'm going to take that. I'm going to utilize that. And I got to do more studies. As I said, I really want to be a teacher. That's really genuinely what I want to be. I want to teach people, whether I get paid with lodging or I get a decent pay. It doesn't matter. As long as I'm teaching people, as long as I'm helping the next generation be a little bit more intuitive and on point. It's as simple as that. You know, balance that left brain on pointness with the right brain intuitiveness, and you're good. You're golden. That's what I want to do. And I need to get my shit together. I need to read more. I need to not talk on things that I'm not sure about. Because I am like 85%, you know? I'm about 85%. I give myself like a good solid B. My memory is pretty dang good. But the problem with me is that I'm slightly dysnomic, and this isn't an excuse, but I legitimately mix numbers up. Like, if I look at a big list of numbers, and I used to do math, and I would do math on whole sheets of paper just filled to the brim with math equations, so that I put those there, they're not jogging around, you know what I'm saying? And like lots and lots of practice went into non-dysnomia, but over time, that dysnomia has come back in. I'm not really dyslexic, but I am dysnomic, and that's strange. I don't know why. Maybe it's because numbers don't have the same sort of association that things coming out of your vocal cords do, right? Numbers are more abstract than letters. I just have a problem with them, and I need to work on that. Or I should just avoid talking about numbers in general, because if I'm mixing up entire decades, which is 10 on a piece of paper, but is 10 years and like thousands of days in real life, well, that's bad. So, there was never any esoteric secret behind the Nazis or their posterity in the CIA. They're just a mix of brute force, swindling, and gaslighting. And as true as can be. That really is the secret. And it's not a secret you should pass on. Like, in the way that you should, like, take it up and continue it through a culture because it's important or necessary. It's been the reason why they got a tiny lump sum of all the potential that America and the world could have been, and then all of the rest of the potential has been destroyed. And one of the main things is destroying the potential willfully, destroying other people's resources willfully, poisoning the well for no other reason than to detract from people you consider to be outside of your limited hangout, which is a factor of the Freudian death drive. And Freud was a horrible loon and pedophile apologist and toxin to psychology in general. But he had a couple of good points, and one of them is the death drive. And the death drive is something that allows people to take away from other people as they get closer to death to feel better about themselves dying. That's because they don't have a good proper coping mechanism for that. And you'll see this sort of behavior in a lot of movies, And you'll be shocked when you find it out in the real world, but there's the mechanism behind that is the death drive. And I think movies themselves kind of normalize something that was a little bit more niche, but the directors and producers of those movies, you see, were very in touch with that particular niche. Exploiting it, if you will. So, moving on. As I said, the Gitmo stuff is a disappointment. Operating Torture Dungeon ain't America. We work very, very hard to not be that. Very, very hard. And it's wild that the anti-communism has the same sort of brain, and I've seen this in so many people and people that I love, that Marxism does. It do. It's sad, but it is what it is, and that's how it is. It is a Nietzsche quote, in fact, that in the process of fighting monsters, you should be careful that you do not become one. Which is to say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and by racing each other with things like whataboutism, we've literally gone that way. And we need to genuinely go, no, I will be better than my enemies. People that I consider my enemies are people whose behavior I consider atrocious and abhorrent and not worthy of veneration or repetition. That's it. I think socialism literally means rule by secret societies. I didn't used to think that, but I'm starting to think that more and more as I do more research, you see. Did you know Tajikistan has a direct connection to the massive Afghanistan drug trade? And I'm pretty sure, although they're relatively recent, ISIS-K, otherwise known as ISIS Khorasan, is pumped and backed by the U.S. opium trade. Did you know that Afghanistan had 91% of the world's opium? And that before the United States occupation of Afghanistan 20-some-odd years ago, it only had 8% of the world's opium. And the Taliban that Trump was sitting down with went out and burned the fields and knocked off the poppies, and they do not have any intention of rebuilding them. So that's why I say, Biden's a dumbass, but the one good thing he did was getting out of Afghanistan, and it's even better, in my opinion, that he left the military equipment. Now, the embassy bombing is that's another thing that you'll see in Middle Eastern history pop it up over and over and over again, and it's always seemingly like the CIA's pissed about something and they got their hands into something, but it's straight up. It's just normal people don't want to explode themselves, but there is a tendency for that in that general region. And I don't know if it's a consequence of being the butt of the world's jokes for the last 200 years or so, or ever since gunpowder became a normal thing. The 3 gunpowder empires that broke up the Silk Road have been a laughing stock. And the consequences of that are the world that we live in today. And so maybe they just feel like blowing themselves up over it. Or maybe we're torturing them and fucking their brains up on our black sites. I was really hoping Trump was going to shut down Gitmo or something like that. I was really hoping. But we'll see how it turns out. They're essentially de-terraforming our planet with no showable gains, and I've said this before. They're tapping out a small lump sum for a large amount, and RFK, he's not one of those people. I know that. I've known that for a while now. He's the butt of many jokes, but at the end of the day, he's a man who's been to hell, and he crawled himself back up out of it. And that's a lot. And I know the strength that you can gain in that climb, and the farther down you go, the more muscle you gain climbing back up, let me tell you. Not me though. I'm a pittance. I gotta genuinely get my game up. Continue my breathing so that I can build myself back up to where I was before my dog Coco passed away. So, It's always the Israel defenders that are making the nastiest, unfunny, racist remarks and pisses off the left to no end. And it's just like the people in the center of that shouldn't really be hooting about it because it's real nasty and real stupid and like propagandistic. And like I'm all for free speech, but personally, and it's weird that it's always the Israeli defenders that are simultaneously the ones I see like doing the most nasty, aberrant racism, and I don't know if it's a spawning point or if it's an aping or what. I don't really care. I really hope that people would be better than that, because it's not about how you're born and the consequences of choices that you didn't make. It's about the choices that you make, down to the choices that you made when you were a little kid and how you decided to live your life, how you decided to treat other people, how you decided to treat animals, how you decided to treat your own body. Those choices are your choices, and those are worthy of being criticized up until the day that you die, but you should not be criticized for choices of your ancestors. And frankly, there's nothing wrong with different colors of skin. They're just made for the different UV zones of the world. It's that simple. Whatever, man. Whatever. Gigavaxed helipilot swooping over the neighborhood. He willfully molests, even if he doesn't know. He willfully molests, even if he doesn't realize how disgusting that is, and that's exactly why he's gigavaxed. Rest in peace to those. Gosh, 66 dead people that just got crashed into by an aberrant helicopter pilot who's probably... You know, if you're in the military, they put you through so many vaccinations. It's insane. I have never met a single person in my entire life, not back when I knew more military people, not through my various travels, that wasn't messed up really badly by the vaccinations that the Saudis were testing out on people in the Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield shit. Over Kuwait? You know, over what? Saddam tunneling underground into Kuwait, which is funny because technically IP law starts with I own everything up there and everything down there under my property and above my property, from the center of the earth up to the heavens. It's a hilarious concept because of how the earth spins and stuff. And it would just be like, you know, like a laser beam of property ownership slicing through the universe. Oh well. But yeah, everybody knows that. Well, actually, the Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield wasn't when he was digging under the oil fields, was it? I'm not 100% aware of what actually started Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and I should look that up. And in fact, I'm gonna look that up soon. I'm going to do a good deep dive research into what started Desert Storm, Desert Shield, because it's literally just like, they weren't wars, they were operations, they're peacekeeping. It's just like, well, what's the real reason behind that? Because the Iraq War had kind of a real justification. You know, on top of the digging underneath their sovereign borders, you also had the whole babies in incubators, which turned out to be a fabricated claim, but by the time it was acted on and received by the public, it was already far too late. There are a lot of those that popped up after the atrocities of October 7th, which I watched, by the way. I watched the footage that those people that paraglided into Israel took. Like, I literally saw barracks filled with bodies and blood just pooling out of the building. It was pretty bad. And I felt really bad for the Israelis at first, but then obviously seeing this whole Mark of Cain shit pop up, this whole we kill 70 of yours and stuff like that, Jesus said to forgive 70 times, and that's the healing. And that is the veneration, that is the strength. It's not this petty, we're gonna rule through fear shit that always ends up backfiring. Just to let you know. My sheriff literally is DeSantis' best friend, and they're in my backyard right now. They're hanging out over in Titusville, where they're gonna build a bunch of military bases and rocket testing facilities and dump a bunch of chemicals. It's funny, but it's not funny. You know, they're combating the Florida legislator over not wanting to get stuck with the bill. DeSantis says, screw it, put it on the tax base. The legislator says we need some compensation for the migration detainee process and the rounding up process. And I also personally, this is also something I talked about earlier, but I personally believe that this was actually started when DeSantis realized that he couldn't control the torture camps that the Israelis are setting up in my backyard, in my state. Now, I refer to my backyard as both my county and my state. But yeah, that's my personal theory, is that he wanted to control where those people got disappeared off to, and Tom Homan, like, legitimately, I don't think Tom Homan was the person who decided that the Pentagon and the Department of Homeland Security were going to fill Gitmo up with 30,000 of the apparently most stone-cold migrants. Apparently, allegedly, the most stone-cold killers. We'll see how that goes. Tom Homan is a surprise, you know. I thought he was like Judge Holden Core. He's not. He might have seen some shit. Let's put it that way. He might have seen some shit in his life. Like, Kash Patel looks like he's seen some shit. He looks like he's read through a lot of CIA papers. Oh, Lord. Lord have mercy and Lord help us. Let's go. Sorry to make you aware of your bodily process again, but it's important that you practice your deep breathing and extend your focus to shield yourself from both environmental molestation and general weakness. So you focus your entire diaphragm, your stomach, and the muscles around your chest and your arms. Take a big, deep breath, fast and forceful. Even if it kind of hurts, you got to practice that. And then you hold it just a little bit so that you make sure you're absorbing the oxygen. If you just go, then you're blowing out most of your oxygen, genuinely. And then you feel your entire diaphragm and your stomach in motion, pushing out the air, pulling in the air, pushing out the air. Most importantly, with your stomach, you feel it slowly pushing out the air. And you just practice that over and over again. And when you do that, you can integrate that into really effective weightlifting. And as I said previously, you might need to change it up a little bit, like 2 seconds in, 4 seconds out. You know, something like that. But you don't want to hyperventilate. But you'll know when you get that pump. You'll know. And I know I'm looking like this talking about pump. I'm working on it. AI has an awful aspect. Like, all my life I always, and that's when I knew that. Like, it's all so Reddit soy, and you know what? Most of the Reddit soy is actually from a military base where they have about 200,000 Reddit accounts, but only like 8,000 people. Isn't that funny? Military base also does, like psyop shit. It's like the psychological operations base of the military. Interesting, ain't it? If you see a pudgy man blowing in a Carrix, run, my son. Run and never look back. Smithereens, that's one of the classic ways of being blown. Is that cake cooked? No! I want a cake blanchette! No! Oh, I never got Godzilla. Oh, Big Lizard. He'll never be made of metal. No way! I actually do remember watching my dad watch some of the older Godzillas, and I like the Mothra shit. I liked it when, you know what's weird is I've actually kind of always been more of a King Kong fan. Like, dead ass, because of the beauty. I love the beauty of the island. I love the setting and stuff like that. Um, it's the whole, like, yeah, okay, we all hate living here, bro, but do you think it would really be better if all the buildings were knocked down? Asshole. Like, that's a lot of the fantasy I see built up around it. It's just like, he's the good guy. And we know the lore of Godzilla is that he was a lizard that got radiated from a bomb that they dropped on the Bikini Atoll, and then it became a huge lizard and all that. That's the story of Godzilla. But like, it's not all that. It's not all that to write home. It's not something I'm gonna write home about. You can enjoy your stuff if you want. I used to get the feeling that taxidermists get when they want to hoard a cool skull or a cool shell. But as I got older, I realized that's stolen work. The animal took a very hard time maintaining their stuff, eating right. You know, armadillos like to scrape their shells on hard surfaces to kind of sand it and wax it a bit. I'm sure they produce wax through their semi-chitinous shell. But yeah, like there's a ton of work that goes into that. And when you pick it up off the ground, you're stealing that work, and it'll never be as cool as it was when you picked it up, and it'll never be as cool as it was when the animal dropped it. What's that? It's the animal that's cool. You should want to protect the animal. And if you're not, if you're one of those like morbid people who stays on side all the time and is like super black, I get you. But you should also respect the source of things. And then you can be as black as you want without having to worry about sinking into the darkness. You know, it's always perspective. You know, keep yourself balanced in that light and that dark. All right, y'all. Seems like a good cap. Take care.